I always watch the videos the Stop Having Kids channel creates, and I can't help but find myself a bit fascinated with how readily people ignore the harms that are currently going on around us. And even in many respects, how we are all playing a factor to such harms continuing. These types of people reflexively feel the need to mention whatever marginal set of positive experiences that come with life, and how we need to cherish these moments and continue to experience more and more of it. It only, however, for me, begs a question: but at what cost? But at what cost are we having to pay to be able to do such amazing things? Is what these types of people seem not to understand, or at the very least ignore. You can look at it like this. In my eyes, life could be seen as like a balance sheet, and that we are all the accountants. So in a way, we should be accountable for our actions, along with the actions that are currently existing around us. That, in fact, we should then act accordingly. Such an understanding is the intent that comes within the concept of ethics. Now, in terms of what people should do, I know really anyone necessarily has the answers for what ought to be done and in which way. In particular, with the context regarding those that are currently existing right now and how we can benefit those as of right now. That matter is, for me personally, not a worry to prioritize. That being due to the fact that for those that are already here, we're pretty much lost causes. It's a one-way train where we're going. We're just a bunch of bewildered animals running around, wasting time in however way we see fit before the train tracks stop forever for us. This humanity, sentience was a flaw, mistake, whatever pathetic term you want to coin it, from our basic makeup on up. But on the flip side, in the terms of what we ought not to do, the conversation then becomes less clouded. Surely. Even this following commentary shouldn't, in technicality, be said. It should go without saying, but clearly we're running up this quote-unquote balance sheet because there is an ever-constant flux of birth and deaths that are flowing into this existence. So I'm compelled to explain yet again the hidden in plain sight, the basic knowledge to the crime that is currently going on, seemingly forever ongoing, for those who are unable to see it themselves, or for those who are not willing to admit to such an observable reality. First off, with my other video, imposition, who are we to place someone to have to be in this position of accountancy? It just doesn't make sense. Whether or not future beings are going to want to care about the experiences around them does not negate the fact that those experiences are currently going on. I mean, just the concept alone of understanding and coming to terms with knowing that there are extreme levels of harms currently existing in this realm makes me, without question, without hesitation, even consider the idea of bringing another innocent spirit in this mess of a mistake. I mean, you got different extreme type of harms that we should know of when it comes to stuff like human trafficking. Child abuse really is extreme. Organ harvesting. I mean, we're eating each other. You got cannibalism, torture, murder. You know what I'm saying? And then you have things that are more broadcasted conventionally within the political realm. When you talk about things that are dealing with like endless war, terrorism. Of course, homelessness is always a thing. Poverty, the exploitation of the common man, racism, sexism, all the isms. Essentially just corruption. And even the former stated when it came to human trafficking, abuse, all that stuff, the harvesting, the torture, the murder, that's still politically based too, in many respects. So regardless of who anyone is, we're all being affected by something. We're even seeing the effect being played out. When it comes to these different types of warfares, I mean, nutrition is war. So this is all just a bunch of war going on. We're all just hungry out here trying to feed ourselves at some type of sense. When it comes to the economic warfare, the informational warfare, biological, neurological warfare, even the potential for more actual conventional war down the road that could potentially happen that we can't even really imagine right now. That's why, in my eyes, it should be obvious how people are sick in the head. I mean, at the very least, they're blind as hell. Because despite all these harms that are currently going on, they think it makes sense to bring somebody here to have to be associated to such travesty. That yet and still, through it all, they choose to remain in this debauchery. It's truly wicked, man. I don't know what else to say. It's truly wicked. And then when it comes to the sensations, not necessarily a specific type of phenomenon, but the sensation that gets derived, you have stuff that are very common when it comes to very commonly sensed experience when it comes to despair, dissatisfaction, anxiety. You have your own type of self-frustration, heartaches. You have fear. You got anger, pain, panic, heartache, loneliness. I mean, you have just all these types of persistent types of sensations that we, for the most part, just shrug off as a species. We just think it's okay to condone because we're just so used to experiencing it ourselves. Let alone you have a few different types of afterthought types of harms that we don't even really consciously think about all the time when it comes to the process of knowing that we're aging, the constant need to just upkeep our physical maintenance, basically just a brutality that comes with nature in general, how it just gets disregarded as a whole. I've always just thought that this life is a major chore, that we're not even doing a good job cleaning up our own mess, let alone the mess that comes with our species as a whole. People don't really care about the mess that they're creating, let alone now they're placing their future progeny to have to worry about such a thing. And for what? Man, people trip me when it comes to what they cope with and how they look to justify this existence with what they cope with. It's just sick. Shout out to Christopher Sideris. He had a recent video where he was talking about he went over like a comparison with the harms and compared it alongside the joy, the good type of experiences that comes with this material game of life. And like he said, and how it should be clear for anyone else to know, that there is really no comparison. When it comes to the good versus the bad, the pleasures versus the pain, there really isn't a comparison. One side obviously should greatly overwhelm the other because one is the source of the other. As we should know, the pleasure is the byproduct. It's the after effect. It's never the effect, predominantly speaking. So clearly, when it comes to that comparison, there really, again, is not much to compare. Then I can shout out Lawrence Ayton. Religiously, he has referenced the short story, The Ones Who Walk Away from the Omelas. Essentially, it should make us ask ourselves, what amount of suffering are we okay with condoning for our own benefit? That at what cost does this jazzy game of life total up to be worth paying for? But it seems that people as a whole seemingly do not care about totaling up these numbers. In particular, they do not care about considering the unfortunate and non-preferred experiences and sensations that are currently being lived out by innocent spirits. And I mean, you can hear it when you see them in these types of conversations. You can hear it, you can see it. Like I said before, they reflexively prioritize mentioning whatever so-called positive experiences that comes with life. This is what they initially do, despite all the harms that we talk about initially. And this is what they do. They want to let us know, like we don't know where they're coming from. I mean, it's such a immature, such an immature mindset. I mean, that's why, honestly, when it comes to people like Amendum, many times throughout his videos, he would wish the worst types of harms onto these types of people. And I get it, because they're condoning these worst types of harms. So whether or not it's a rude thing for him to say, I get the point, because again, they're condoning such things. They're ignoring, disregarding these harms that are currently being lived out right now. By sheer concept alone, they're saying that it's okay because they're okay. If they were the ones that were having to deal with it, maybe then they would have a different perspective on this matter. It kind of goes to the point of how we can't really predict the future. We like to think that we can because, things have always been this way. But again, we know that we don't know the future. Things like COVID should let us know that. When it really comes down to it, we're all just wretched beasts. It's kind of something that we can forget easily with this quote unquote modern world that we find ourselves in. But when it comes down to it, we can really fight each other. We're really no better than any other animal. All this government and different legislation, that stuff can really go out the window. Because when it really comes down to it, again, we're just all fighting amongst each other. So it's nothing to celebrate around here. So with all that being said, it should be understood how most people do not hold themselves accountable for the actions that, let alone they themselves are doing, in regards to the different types of actions that they're seeing around them. They pretty much live in their own bubble and they run deficits on their own personal balance sheets. Though in an obvious sense, anyone is really in this category, I myself included. I'm in my own personal bubble that kind of pretty much by default goes for anyone. We're really not doing anything here to mitigate the harms that are currently going on for existing people right now. But in regards to the couple of things that separates us from the pack of regular folks, is that we're able to willingly, consciously consider the unfortunate experiences that are currently going on in this world. Let alone that we're not placing any potential possibility of a burden to be experienced for those that could have had come within our own lineage. But for the common day regular folks, they're okay with fiending for the smallest lick that they can essentially get their hands on. Despite all the different levels of harms and brutality that we can look to let them know that they already know, they essentially, again, don't really care. Which is just really sad. But to continue with the concept of this life being like an analogy to that of a balance sheet, we should all pretty much not be able to contend against the fact that we're clearly running in the negative, that we are perpetually in the negative by default with the set of reoccurring costs that comes with this existence. That even most people are liabilities more so than assets. I mean, people are barely assets for their own lives, let alone for others. I mean, just seeing a bunch of resource-dependent zombies that are running amok. That's all I really see. And the balance sheet is only getting worse. It's only getting larger and larger when it comes to the deficit that we're running because people are putting more people to have to be here. It's only those that are willing to abstain from doing any such thing that are cutting their losses short, thankfully, for the sake of even the people that are wanting to promote this propagation. You're welcome. And if we're really going to be honest, mature, fair, very credible, commendable traits, we would have to realize that we should really, as a concept, at the very least, should file for bankruptcy. That bankruptcy, by the concept, could look like to be like Altruism. That we should quote unquote close shop. That we should let the unconsciousness, the primordial, the non-dual state, relieve us from this failure of a conception. That we should not continue the sick game and continue to run up our balance sheets. that by sheer concept alone, again, this should not be. But, this isn't going to happen, at least not through man's own will. We got people out here, again, fiending for that lick. You want to get that kick, that temporary relief that they have with getting their itch scratched. Pretty much just a bunch of simps out here. A bunch of simps that are coping with their predisposed nature to be content with their innate state of Stockholm syndrome. And so again, nothing to celebrate. Nothing to celebrate here. All these times that I make these videos, I'm just talking a bunch of shit, talking a bunch of smack to the mentality of people as a whole. That's all I'm doing with these videos, just talking a bunch of hot shit. Because I feel the need to talk a bunch of hot shit and smack because they, again, for the most part, people think that there's really something worth going on here. Or even that for people that think that they care about others, they think that there's something that can be changed ultimately for the better. The point I have against that is that we should all understand that nothing ultimately is changing here. It's only but a downward spiral that we have going on, specifically in regards to our own existence. We know with life comes death, that this was a wrap. It was a wrap from the start. So what are we doing placing people here to be ticking time bombs? I mean, come on. Though I will say, speaking for myself here, I could really care less about what people ultimately do. I'm not really about uniting people per se. Anyone here currently existing will have to, quote unquote, save themselves. And they can't even really do that. When it comes to the you that you know you to be, we're always going to be trapped here in this matrix. That's all that we know. We just have to simply live out the livelihood that we were placed to have to experience. That we're all really just doing all that we can, whatever we think that is just. But again, this really isn't much to be said, but in my eyes, the most just thing is to leave the hell people alone, to just let them be, leave them the hell alone. In particular, when it comes to the hypothetical unborn, to leave them the hell alone. That's the most just thing to do. To make another analogy when it comes to this type of life, you can look at life like a party. That our parents thought that this was the most rad type of party that they could invite ourselves into. They assumed that anyone who get invited to this party called life through the conception of birth would only but be grateful for having the chance to have experienced whatever this party has to offer us. That is foreign to even think that someone would not want to be invited to such a thing. But I guess when it comes to people like myself, those listening for the most part, I guess we're aliens because I could care less about anything that's going on here. Pretty much all that I see at this party is a bunch of crime going on. A bunch of lame-ass people around here. Simps thirsty for another lick is all I see. Pretty much like a horse chasing a carrot on a stick. No one ever asked to be invited to this type of cesspool. So it really doesn't make sense. And to, again, kind of go further with this party analogy, for those that do drag people here, I see it that when, again, it comes to their mentality, they're drunk. They're just drugged out. Because they don't make any sense. They don't have any logic with anything that they're saying, especially in this type of conversation. They don't embody any empathy, no compassion within the midst of this all. So again, people's mentalities are essentially that of a drunken man. Literally, like a bloated person who's not making any sense and is acting a fool. That's pretty much ultimately what I see when I hear and listen to people defend the stuff that's going on here. And how whatever positive sets of experiences that we have to experience at this life is worth, again, the constitution of harm to those that are having to be dragged here. And to continue again with this life party analogy, not to belittle rape, and apologies to anyone that may take offense to this, But that's how we get raped into this existence, essentially. You have people that are having a quote unquote good time, and we're paying the price. We're the ones that are really having to run that bill up, and are the ones paying for these natural faults that comes with this material gaming. So it's a zero-sum game at best being played here. Our begetters, our mothers and fathers, have their own sensual pleasures, and now we're paying that ripple effect. And because of such, it's constituting more harm, indirectly and directly. So we should know that nature by its function promotes evil, and that humans are only but manifestations of this sick nature. Yeah, we have certain things that could be more evil than others. Yes, that's why we have this even word of evil. Yes, but our very innate processing, the upkeep that takes with being a sentient creature, a human being, is destructive, is evil by its very nature. It's pretty much like a pyramid scheme going on here, like multi-level marketing that I see going on. People that are quote unquote trying to provide beneficial reasons to why it makes sense that this is a good thing that is going on. But it really isn't. It really isn't, man. This isn't hard. It isn't really hard. We're on one side looking to articulate such reason of empathy, while the other side is looking to just follow biology, follow nature. So nature never had any words that comes with it. It's just brutality. It's just forceful harm. And so for people to look to, again, justify that, I don't want to say it's strange, because it's more than just strange. It's sick. It's wicked. For people that are able to hear this and that feel compelled to do the most sane spiritual thing in regards to abstaining from childbirth, they're going to do that. I can ultimately really care less what people ultimately do, because people that know the message will be able to feel it and they'll go from there. Whether this was something that they thought about themselves, or if this was something that they had come to learn about, the information is already readily accessible for them to be aware to at their own accord. People will follow what leads to what their heart is leading them to see. And from what I've seen when it comes to antinatalism, it can kind of be broken down to a couple of concepts when it comes to the descriptive and the prescriptive analysis. Really, both cannot be refuted, but when it comes especially to the descriptive part of antinatalism, it's pretty clear, because we're just describing what's going on. That's literally all we're doing. We're just describing the harms that are going on. It's just that people are ignoring it. So you can't really get around that. There's unnecessary harm currently being imposed, and people are okay with this. This is observational reality, and this is evil. Man is evil. This should not really be hard to understand. Man condones harm, so man is evil. So when it comes to the prescriptive breakdown, that's where things can kind of get mucky. But really, again, that's not much to refute against. It's just that people want to condone harm, which is why we're saying they're not ethical. But when it comes to, again, the prescriptive analysis, is asking what ought people to do. And it's really, in this case, saying what people ought not to do when it comes to not to procreate. And you either will do it or you won't. But again, the descriptive analysis, there's no contention that should be had. Again, we're just describing the realities, the unfortunate realities more so that are happening. So again, people are just dishonest, really. And it's in part why I wanted to make a video like I did a bit ago when it came to the concept of effective altruism. I wanted to voice my point of view on that when it comes to how others see it fit to continue to propagate our species, because it could potentially lead to more constructive ways to mitigate suffering for future generations that would exist. Or to put it in a different way, it could more effectively and efficiently lead to our extinction for sentience as a whole here. Because for me, and I would know, at least for others, I would imagine, it does not make sense to place a problem that I was not able to fix now onto my future son or daughter. As a man, I can't in my own mind rightly promote such a concept. I mean, to lay that type of debt down on my offspring, it's just a cruel thing to do. Full stop, at bottom. To place them to be the janitor in this so-called party of life, to clean up what I'm not even really cleaning up myself, is, again, a cruel thing to do. It is best to, again, leave them alone. You know, just leave them alone. That's all we're saying. Leave us alone. Just because people are simps to this deficient state of existence does not then mean that we should bother creating such further dependencies out of no necessity. It doesn't make sense. So again, when you see people that oppose this mentality of antinatalism, in an obvious sense, you should see it that these people are essentially saying that you and I, that they would pull the lever down, that they would place us to be here again. That's what they're saying. That is what they're saying when they look to verbalize such opposition. And I don't know how that's honest. I don't know how that's fair. I don't know how that's mature, that they look to embody such a mentality. I mean, it's just sick. Just sick, and it's honestly tiring and pathetic. I mean, people they just got to get real. They don't really care about the costs that are having to come up with this game of life, because they're not the ones that had to ultimately pay for it. Just a bunch of crime.